Boldwood presents Summer in Provence, written by Lucy Coleman and read by Lucy Scott. The moral right of the author has been asserted. This performance is owned by Boldwood. April 2018. Stroud, Gloucestershire. Chapter 1. The wind of change is blowing. Is it a blessing or a curse to be born with an inner voice, one that pipes up unbidden, filling you with a sense of uneasy expectation? The situation isn't helped by the fact that my head has been pounding all day, but for the last hour I've had a familiar shooting pain in my right eye, and now it's becoming relentless. It's building, whatever is coming, and the stress of it is making me sick to my stomach. When it finally reveals itself to me, my instincts are screaming that everything will change. Every little thing I take for granted is going to be threatened. Change can be exhilarating, but what I feel is a heaviness beginning to descend upon me, and I'm fearful about what is coming. Bzz, bzz, bzz. The phone skitters across the desk, making me jump. I've been trying to read the final page of this report for the last 20 minutes, but the words keep swimming in front of my eyes. I don't want to answer it because it's taking all my resolve to sit here quietly reading, let alone engage in even a simple conversation. Maybe it can wait. It's too late in the day for it to be my boss, and I scan around, realizing everyone else has already gone home. I retract my hovering hand, leaning over instead to check the caller ID. It's my sister, Hannah. Instantly I panic and my mouth goes dry as I snatch up the phone, pressing it to my ear. At the moment, she's a constant worry, and it's just one thing after another as she lurches from one emotional crisis to the next. Hormones have a lot to answer for, don't they? My voice is uneven, a gravelly rasp I barely recognise. "What's up, Hannah?" I pause to clear my throat. "Is everything okay?" Thud goes my heart in slow motion, as if it's mechanical and in need of rewinding. I know I should have quit working an hour ago to go home and dive beneath the duvet to ride this out. "Fern, I can't believe you're still at work. Do you know what time it is?" The haze of pain around me clears a little, as the warm lilt in her tone reassures me she's fine. I'm leaving soon." Closing my eyes to fight the nausea as another wave of pain washes over me. Even my teeth are now hurting. I ease back my shoulders to release the tension in my neck, but it doesn't help. "I'm with Aiden. You need to come home right now. I checked the lottery ticket pinned to the fridge door while we were waiting for you." I can hear a jumble of voices in the background, which confuses me as I fight to process her words. "Ticket? What ticket?" "Oh, the one I bought at the supermarket on Friday. It's Tuesday. The days roll through my head with absolutely no connection to anything. "Well?" She laughs, excitement raising the pitch of her voice and making me wince. "Well, what?" The pounding is now excruciating, and I realise if I don't take a migraine pill, I'm going to keel over. "Fern, you sound half asleep. You only matched one number, but you flipping won the millionaire's raffle!" My stomach begins to churn, and I slump forward, racked with pain, until my forehead touches the desk. "Lovely. Tell Aiden I'll be home soon. Promise." Click. Why is Hannah at the house? Why isn't she at uni? Then I remember that it's the Easter holidays. It's fine. All I need to do now is to get home in one piece. "You look awful, Fern. Are you fighting off a migraine attack?" I nod, dropping my bag on the floor and gratefully sinking down onto one of the chairs. It looks like I missed a party. The breakfast bar is littered with glasses, 2 open bottles of Prosecco, and an assortment of snacks. Aiden is staring at me. "Tea?" he asks gently. "Yes, please." My body feels heavy now that the pain is under control, but the side effects aren't pleasant. My jaw, neck and shoulders feel bruised, as if I've hit something with force. At least my stomach has stopped churning. "Where's Hannah?" "She had to head off as she's meeting up with her roommate for pizza, remember?" Your mum and dad popped in to drop off the coat you left at their house after Sunday lunch, and they offered her a lift. Oh, yes. And the drinks? I nod in the direction of the mess Aiden has begun to clear. Georgia from next door knocked to say hello when she spotted your parents' car parked on the drive. Hannah had just checked the lottery results on her phone and was buzzing with the news. She texted Steve to join us after Georgia said she'd stay for a drink. It turned into a little celebration, and I kept hoping you'd walk through the door. He carries a mug of tea across, placing it in front of me on the table. Sorry about this morning, he adds casually, as if it wasn't a big deal. But his apology is tinged with guilt, and he's avoiding eye contact. Does he think I stayed away on purpose? In the 7 years that we've been married, we've never rowed at breakfast before. In fact, we rarely argue, but recently, I'm beginning to feel I don't know him anymore. You must be feeling really awful if even the thought of £1 million hitting the bank account doesn't raise a smile. Have you had it all day? He wrinkles his brow, and his reaction tugs at my heartstrings. I love every little inch of that expressive face, including the silvery white scar on his forehead, a reminder of the boisterous young toddler who drove everyone mad with his antics, or so I'm told, and those hazel eyes, and the closely cropped, dark brown hair he daren't grow out, as if it has a life of its own, is imprinted on my mind. For the briefest of moments, what I see isn't a 29-year-old man standing in front of me, but how he was when we first met, a 17-year-old who thought he was a man already. In those days, he only had 2 hairs on his chest, and now it's in serious need of waxing, in my opinion. The thoughts running through my head make me smile. More or less, I admit. You should have phoned. I don't like you driving when you're like this. Like this? I frown as I look up at him. The effort involved in processing his words is hard work. Seeing the concern etched on his face triggers a memory from this morning. As he stomped around in a bad mood, I felt he was simply waiting for me to leave. My presence seemed to annoy him for some reason I couldn't comprehend. All I did was ask him what was wrong. In a full-blown attack, babe. You don't always realise your judgment is impaired. Remember the time you got the car wedged up against the pillar as you pulled into the garage? It was one incident, probably 5 years ago, and yes, that day I shouldn't have attempted to drive myself home. I'd forgotten my tablets, and I didn't want to cause a fuss. I'd inherited these sick headaches from Dad, who warned me that stress was a big trigger for him, which didn't help at all. Who can avoid stress? I remember having to abandon the car before I finally staggered inside. Aiden came back to find me collapsed on the floor in the hallway. The following morning he said I'd scared him, and he made me promise I wouldn't take that risk again. Well, at least Aiden still cares, so whatever is going wrong between us, that's a comfort, I suppose. He slides into the chair opposite me, looking sheepish. Hannah was right. I double-checked the ticket myself. We've won, Fern. Wrapping my hands gently around the mug of tea for a few seconds, I allow the almost scalding heat to shock some life back into me. The migraine pills leave my senses feeling muted, as if there's a slight disconnect, a fuzziness that won't be shaken. As the heat builds, I withdraw my hands and drop them down onto my lap. With fingers tingling, it's good to feel something that pulls me sharply back into the moment. It's only money. The words jump into my head, unbidden. Money won't fix the fact that something has changed in Aiden, and my fear is that he has fallen out of love with me. We'll be able to pay off the mortgage and clear the credit cards. He draws to a halt. Aiden's tone is gentle, and as I watch his expression, I can see he understands it hasn't fully sunk in yet. My brain doesn't seem able to process the words right now, and I look at him blankly. Come on. What you need isn't tea, but sleep. He stands, and in 2 strides, a pair of strong arms lift me up, out of my seat, and steer me towards the door. Promise me you won't take that risk again, silly thing. You might be Superwoman, Fern, but I suspect even she has an off day every now and again. We all need a little help from time to time, and that's what I'm here for. I needed to hear that. Oh, how I needed to hear that. With his arms around me, a sense of relief, of being rescued, allows me to let go. Like a balloon deflating. Suddenly I feel empty, and my husband is in control. My rock is still my rock. Aiden lowers me onto the bed and helps me undress. As soon as my body sinks back onto the soft, cool surface of the crisp cotton sheet and my head hits the pillow, I'm spirited away. The darkness is like a cocoon, and I welcome it. Chapter 2. Isn't it everyone's dream? A win? Georgia peers at me over the top of her mug of coffee, her eyebrows knitting together in concern. What do you mean it's causing a problem? Figuring out what to do with a considerable windfall requires a lot of thought, but I'm not sure that's a problem exactly. If it is, it's certainly a problem most people wouldn't mind having. She scoops back her mop of ginger curls, and those piercing blue eyes search mine. I sigh. It feels as if Aiden and I have talked about nothing else for the last 2 weeks. A sudden influx of money, I've come to discover, doesn't instantly magic away all of one's problems. Our family and friends, the people we both work with, all assume we're in some sort of state of euphoria. But the truth is that we aren't. And I know that sounds ungrateful. It's complicated, Georgia, I admit. She places her mug back down on the table to signal that I have her full attention. Come on, get it off your chest. If you can't trust me, then you can't trust anyone. We've been friends long enough for you to know that I have your back no matter what. It's hard to put into words, and it takes me a few moments to pull my erratic thoughts together cohesively. I think Aiden's going through some sort of crisis. Don't they call it burnout these days? You know, when people get themselves into a state of emotional, physical and mental exhaustion. Our life seems to be in limbo right now. Aiden always feels he has to keep going. What he does is never enough in his eyes, which is crazy because he's running on empty and miserable with it. The moment I finish speaking, I can't believe I said that out loud. Georgia's jaw drops, and her mouth hangs open for a second before she snaps it shut. I've always thought of him as Mr. Dependable, wishing Steve was a little more like him. I didn't give it a thought about how stressful that might be. I know the charity rely on him heavily because he has that ability to motivate others. You know what they say? If you want something done, ask a busy person. I guess it's partly my fault. We'd love to have a baby at some point, but our savings were dwindling. Opportunities were coming up at work and I was in the running for promotion. It was a time to step up and prove I could handle it. Now, of course, money isn't an issue, so you can relax. It's a fair enough comment, but Georgia doesn't understand it wasn't solely about the money. It was about the recognition, and I did what I had to do to make it happen. If I hadn't been so focused on where I was heading, maybe I would have noticed it was all becoming too much for him. This is the first time I've allowed myself to admit my fears. Up until now, it's been an elusive worry floating around inside my head. But as the weeks and months have passed, the random pieces have started to come together, and what I'm beginning to understand is disturbing. This is a bit unexpected, I will admit. Although he hasn't been his usual jolly self recently, a bit preoccupied perhaps is what I'd noticed, Georgia suggests. I can almost see her mind ticking over as we sit here, glumly realising the signs have been there for a while. We no longer talk about the future, it's all day-to-day stuff. We've been married for 7 years, and I can't help wondering if that has something to do with it, I admit. Georgia smiles. The 7-year itch. Is that even real? The alleged point at which boredom sets in, apparently. I just didn't think it would happen to us. What a fool I've been, assuming Aiden's silence meant we were still working towards the same goals. He's become withdrawn, and that's a warning sign I should have jumped on from the start. He is an overachiever, so I get that bit. But you're the centre of his world, Fern. And he's the centre of mine, but it's always work or family these days. We've stopped bothering to dress up and have a date night. time to just enjoy being together. We come home tired and veg out in front of the TV, and weekends it's either something related to the charity, working on the house, or visiting my family. He hasn't done something stupid, has he? I mean, you do hear of... Georgia's frown is deepening. No, it's not like that. At least, I don't think he's had an affair or anything. I'd at least sense that. Wouldn't I? Georgia's eyebrows shoot up, disappearing into corkscrew curls. Well, you're a pair of workaholics, which is probably why you've always been so close, because you understand each other. Maybe you need a break, a little holiday to enjoy some undisturbed quality time together. I wish it was that simple, but I fear that would actually tip us over the edge. Being together 24/7 while he's so touchy would be yet another pressure. I see what you mean. Sort of confronting it head-on because there wouldn't be any distractions. Damn it, this is a bit of a predicament, isn't it? Well, she's right there. How can I explain something that's made up of a zillion disparate little oddities? In isolation, they mean nothing. Combined, they mean something. But what, exactly? He's been so grouchy lately that the timing hasn't been right to have a heart-to-heart. So another week drags by and the gap between us seems to just keep getting wider and wider. You guys always used to have fun together, and it was good to see. I feel bad not noticing something had changed. Not much of a friend, am I? Now I've made her feel guilty, and that's not what this is all about. Aiden has become lukewarm to every attempt I make to reach out to him. What's frustrating is I can't even pinpoint when the change began to occur. That slip from spine-tingling excitement whenever we're alone into a cosy, almost mundane existence. I could weep. Georgia picks up her mug and sips her coffee, mulling over my words. It's agonizing. Steve and I don't have time to even think about going through a plateau in our marriage because of the kids. All we can think about is what sleep we can grab, and quality time as a couple has become a distant memory. Our gift to each other is a lion. She grimaces. I can see it's an attempt to lighten the moment, albeit she's speaking from the heart. But this is the last thing she expected me to blurt out, and now I wish I hadn't started the conversation. This win, well, it seems to be polarising us, Georgia. I just want the old Aiden back. She stares at me, shaking her head sadly. Now you're worrying me, Fern. You're in HR and you deal with people and their problems all the time. You are a good communicator and you know how to read the signs. If you can't handle this, then maybe it's time to think about talking to a marriage guidance counsellor. Before I can react to her suggestion, we hear the sound of the front door opening. Aiden's voice calls out, "Hello," which makes my stomach flutter nervously. Georgia and I exchange a resigned look. "I'd better go," she says brightly. "I didn't realise it was that time already. It's my turn to cook tonight. My brood will be attacking the biscuit jar and wondering why there's nothing in the oven." She places her hand on my arm, giving it a squeeze. "We'll speak tomorrow," she whispers. And as Aiden enters the kitchen, she gives him a warm smile. "One in, one out. Catch you later, guys." And with that, she disappears out through the back door. Aiden approaches, stooping to place a fleeting kiss on my cheek, and I can see he has something on his mind. "Hard day?" I ask, hoping it will prompt him to talk about it. "Yep." With that, he turns to grab a mug and carries it across to place a coffee pod in the machine. The noise temporarily puts a halt to any conversation. I busy myself grabbing a few things from the fridge and begin assembling a salad. Anything to fill the awkward silence that lies between us like an increasing chasm. My back is towards Aiden, but I hear him pull out one of the dining chairs and the creak as he lowers himself onto the seat. "We're getting good at avoiding tactics, aren't we?" His words make me spin around. There's no edge to his voice, just a ring of sadness. I'm trying not to make it any worse than it is already, I admit. Is that avoidance? I suppose it is. But I don't know how else to handle whatever it is we're going through right now. He nods his head in the direction of the seat opposite him. Maybe it's time to be honest with each other, Fern. His words hit me as forcefully as if I'd just been slapped. Hoped, we always have been? He shakes his head. I don't know why I feel like something is missing from my life at the moment. And I know that's not fair on you. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it's affecting everything I do, or try to do. Suddenly, when I wake up each morning, it all feels rather predictable. He stares down at his mug, avoiding eye contact. Predictable? Well, I didn't see that coming. Isn't it simply another word for boring? Maybe the word I'm looking for is repetitive. He corrects himself, and I feel my shoulders sag in dismay. Repetitive, I repeat dully. If this is about starting a family, then I know we keep putting it off, but it was always in the plan for when we hit our early 30s. If you want to bring that forward, you only have to say, everything is flexible, Aiden, you know that. But we need to be sure we're ready, as it's a huge commitment, darling. It's not that. And I don't think adding yet another pressure right now is a good idea anyway. That sounds ominous, to say the least. Look, I'm sorry, I was aware that something hasn't been right between us for a while, and I should have tackled it head on. But whenever I approached the issue, you changed the subject, and I assumed you weren't ready to talk about it. He looks dejected, sitting there in a slump. I thought we'd continue to be united by the things that life threw at us. His tone is now softer, and I can see he's making a concerted effort to verbalise his feelings. Each step can sometimes feel like a hurdle, Fern, and we know that only too well. We've had some great highs and a couple of massive lows, admittedly, but we've always pulled through it together. He's trying to reassure me because he wants this conversation to be over. Ducking and diving won't help, Aiden. We need to get to the bottom of what's wrong. It's not something we can continue to ignore, though, is it? I know it sounds challenging, but now we're actually talking openly. There's no turning back. I can't seem to find the right words to explain how I feel, so I'm not surprised you don't understand. All I know is that I love you, I really do, and I'm gutted to think I'm upsetting you, babe. Eventually he looks up, and what I see as our eyes meet is a look of desperation. Then it softens. Do you remember when we bumped into each other at the school dance and just like that? He clicks his fingers. We knew something had changed. Something big was happening. I think that collided would be a more appropriate word. And it wasn't just a dance, it was a full-blown prom. We were all excitable 16 and 17-year-olds. It was the first time we'd ever spoken because Aiden mixed with the sporty crowd and I was one of the geeks in those days. I nod, not wanting to interrupt him. I remember our first date 3 days later, and you phoned me the following day to say that your dad said you couldn't see me again. All because I'd brought you home an hour late and I'd blasted the car horn 3 times as I pulled away. Lights went on all around the quiet little cul-de-sac that night. But I was showing off because I wanted to impress you, and I was wildly happy. Back then, I was looking forward to starting an A-level course at the progressive Amersley College in the autumn. Dad, a natural-born worrier, thought Aiden was rather cocky and overconfident, so it wasn't the best start. But as the years passed, he realised he had gained another son, a man he could trust to take care of his often stubborn daughter. Aiden continues, "And you said, but I don't care because nothing is going to stop me from seeing you. And you meant it. That made me feel invincible. Nothing in life would ever throw me again because I'd found my soulmate. 2 is stronger than 1. My eyes fill with tears, because while Aiden is a thoughtful and rather romantic man, he doesn't often choose to talk about his emotions. When he does, it's always for a reason, and a chill begins to creep up my spine, 1 vertebra at a time. We were headstrong, weren't we? I admit. Everyone said it wouldn't last, because after A-levels, we both hoped to be able to apply for a place at university. Even at that stage, it looked unlikely we would be heading off in the same direction, and everyone knows long-distance relationships don't fare well in general. But while the thought of being apart was terrifying, we never doubted each other for a second. In hindsight, what were the chances of staying together through all of that? But we did. It turned out that absence really does make the heart grow fonder, and each time we met up, it was truly exhilarating. Aiden scans my face, and I wonder what he sees. Would you change anything? He levels at me. You've overtaken me career-wise, and I realise I held you back. You turned down a dream job offer in London without a second's thought so we could buy this place and finally begin putting down roots. No wonder your dad took a while to forgive me and accept that you had settled for less than you deserved. He knows that isn't strictly true. I needed to be close to my family at that time for lots of reasons, and putting down roots here was the right thing to do. Is this upset about my recent promotion, I wonder? I hope this isn't about who earns the most, as that would be disappointing. If Aiden's ego is that fragile, then I'm doing something very wrong. He means everything to me, more than money, more than a job title, and he doesn't know me at all if he thinks those things matter. Aiden's work role has evolved, and he might not have a pile of diplomas to put on a wall, but he has a very marketable range of skills. Skills that come naturally to him because he inspires people to care. That's why he's perfect to motivate the whole team when it comes to fundraising. He's indispensable. But I know he doesn't perceive himself in that way, and it saddens me that he undersells himself and his abilities. I can't avoid answering his question, but it's hard not to sound cross. No, of course I wouldn't change a thing. Why would you even ask a question like that? Swiping away my tears, a strange mix of feelings stir within me. Is he trying to say, I'm the one who has changed? He sighs, and it's a gut-wrenching sound. I don't know how to explain this feeling of, what if? My stomach drops as I stare at him. You're regretting the last 7 years, the choices we made? No! The word hurtles towards me at speed, like a bullet shattering the silence. He begins shaking his head emphatically, his hands now balled together in front of him, making a fist. Aiden stares up at the ceiling, and I have no words I can offer because I don't understand what's going on inside his head. He was emotionally distraught when his grandma died a year ago, but this is different. This is something I have never seen in him before, and it scares me. I'm finally staring in the face of the fear that I've been carrying around with me for nearly 6 months now, and I don't know what to do or say. Aiden leans forward in his seat, extending one hand across the table towards me. Instinctively, I reach out, and our fingers intertwine. I love you, Fern. I always have, and I always will. But suddenly I don't know who I am beneath the outer facade I show to the world. So many different things to different people, and yet inside I'm feeling lost right now. I know I should just be grateful for the life we have and count my blessings. I tell myself that constantly, but... The silence is painful while I wait, and our fingers slowly drift apart. But it doesn't seem to help me make sense of this feeling I have of it not being enough. As if there's something I'm supposed to do, something that will make a difference, and yet I don't know what. Something better than us? I had no idea you felt this way, Aiden. Why didn't you say something before now? He looks shocked to hear the anger in my voice. Fern, I'm just trying to explain something that I'm not sure even I can fully comprehend. This isn't about having regrets, and I'm sorry if that's the way it's coming across. You've come into your own and you're blossoming, and I love that. You aren't just a beautiful, intelligent and caring wife, daughter and sister. You can achieve anything you want. You deserve to have someone alongside you who is equally as strong and focused, but suddenly I'm second-guessing everything I do. It makes me feel weak, as if I'm a fraud and I'm taking the easy way out. I feel as if you're punishing me for something, when all I've ever done is put you, us, first. Whatever I do, I'm going to give it 110% because that's who I am. You know that, Aiden. I'm not competing with you or trying to prove anything. I just want us to be happy. Pushing back on my chair and rising to my feet, disappointment begins to turn into resentment. This isn't the man I married at all. Aiden leaps out of his seat to stop me from leaving. Ever since Grandma died, I felt as if life is a ticking clock. Every single day that passes is a day I should be moving forward, but I feel stuck, drained, invisible even to myself, as if I'm some sort of automaton going through the motions instead of living in the moment. And you couldn't open up to me, your wife? So instead you kept quiet and let it come between us like a growing chasm that gets bigger with each passing day? His face begins to swim in front of me as tears fill my eyes. Don't go, babe. Please don't turn your back on me. His arms around me are comforting and the warmth of his body is reassuring. I will sort myself out, I promise. He whispers into my ear. For one moment, the old, self-assured Aiden is back, and it's a relief to know that maybe, just maybe, all is not yet lost. I think we both need to do some thinking about where we go from here. I'm struggling because I feel you're pushing me away. It hurts, but I can see that you're as confused about this as I am. That's a good thing, though, isn't it? My words make him hug me even closer, and if I ever doubted his love, his body language is firmly denying that. It means I know I'd be lost without you, but maybe to find myself I need to discover who I am outside of our relationship. And there it is. The change that little inner voice was warning me was imminent. The bottom suddenly drops out of my world. He isn't depressed, as I was beginning to fear was the case. No, Aiden feels the life he has is constraining him. He feels trapped. The excitement of the unknown versus the comfort of a relationship spanning 13 years. The life I knew, we knew, is already a thing of the past. And there's nothing I can do to change that now. Old words come back to haunt me. My father once said, "You need to discover who you are as individuals, Fern, before you can take those strengths forward into a relationship. Know yourself first, and everything else will fall into place." Having 3 siblings, I knew myself all right. Ours was a noisy house, but we were happy in between the usual squabbles and petty upsets of family life. I was the sensible one, always enlisted to help out and take control of my brother and sisters. Mum said I was a born negotiator, and she'd laugh whenever I waded in to break up an argument over who was going to sit on the big chair in front of the TV. As I grew into my teens, though, surprisingly, as the second eldest, I became the one pushing the boundaries and driving my parents mad. I was so resolute in the belief that I knew best, I often refused to listen to advice. But with their hands full, there were times when Dad would ground me, and the cooling-off period often did me good. It helped me to put things into perspective, and I needed that. Aiden, on the other hand, being an only child, was the sole focus for his parents. Did that intensity mean he felt his role was always to please and never to disappoint? Perhaps now he's approaching 30, he's beginning to rebel at that feeling of having to please everyone around him. And that, it seems, includes me. That little voice inside my head continues the conversation. Words I simply can't express out loud. I don't want you to please me, Aiden. I simply want to make you happy. That's what I thought I was doing as we build our future together. Well, I guess I failed the one time it really mattered. A half-sob rises up within me. How can I forgive myself for letting you down so badly, my darling? Chapter 3. The Party. About last night, I didn't mean to... Sitting across the breakfast table from me, Aiden's look is apologetic and tinged with guilt. It took me hours to drift off, and I awoke suddenly, a couple of hours later. As I lay there impatiently waiting for dawn to break, I instinctively knew he too was wide awake. With our backs to each other, I'd never felt more alone in my entire life. Hey, if we can't be honest with each other, then something is very wrong. I can't pretend that what you said didn't come as a bit of a shock, I point out, but I'm glad you had the courage to tackle it. And you aren't disappointed in me? Aiden is making no attempt at all to eat his breakfast, and the cornflakes are now lying in the bowl in front of him, soggy and unappealing. I shake my head, scared to utter the word no out loud, fearing it will lack conviction. So, how do we play this? You want some thinking time, but I'm not sure exactly what you have in mind. He'd said, outside of our relationship last night, so I'm guessing he wasn't envisaging a 3-week holiday for 2 somewhere exotic. I want to widen my horizon and experience things up close that I've only been able to dream about so far. The world is a big place, and seeing how other people live will put our lives here into some sort of context for me. I've struggled to make things as easy as possible, knowing that Aiden has been stressed. Is he flinging that back at me, as if it was the wrong thing to do? It's an effort not to let out a frustrated sigh. What exactly are you proposing? Aiden doesn't bat an eyelid as he responds. A year apart, doing our own thing. I'll get that travelling bug out of my system, as I know it unsettles you thinking you're holding me back. And you can take some time to nurture the inner you, Fern. You deserve it. Words fail me, and I stare at Aiden, trying to hide the angry knot forming in my stomach. He's turning this on its head. He's the one causing the chaos in our lives, not me. Or is he simply looking for reassurance and a little time to sort himself out, without which I'll end up losing him? Maybe my strength has become my weakness, addressing issues head-on, coming up with a viable solution and pulling together an action plan to solve the problem. That's what Aiden is expecting of me now, as if this is some sort of work project. But this has become so much more. It's no longer about simply getting through a rough patch, but being in a position to breathe some life back into our marriage. Keep calm, Fern. What's a year? If, when you return, your life together is firmly back on track because Aiden's little crisis is over. And the party we're planning for the May Day bank holiday, which was supposed to be celebrating our good fortune and Hannah's birthday, will also announce... I cast around for the right words, which fail me. That we're both taking a little sabbatical. Lots of people take time out to widen their horizons. I jump in, cutting him off. This is a private matter, and I want him to be clear that there's no need to worry anyone unduly. As far as I'm concerned, the sooner it starts, the sooner it will be over. I'm still in shock, but I need to look at this as an adventure, a holiday from which we will both return and pick back up where we left off. But there's a real chance that it will change us in ways we can't even begin to imagine, and Aiden doesn't seem able or willing to grasp that fact. It sounds defeatist on my part. It's not meant to be. But I'm scared. I love my life as it is, and it's always been enough for me. It used to be enough for Aiden too, and I'm gutted that is no longer the case. It's Bank Holiday Monday, and my youngest sister, Hannah, is back home with Mum and Dad for 48 hours, before heading off to meet her new boyfriend's family. My parents are stressing over it, of course, as we can all sense this relationship is a little more serious than any she's been in before. Me? I'm happy to see her smiling and experiencing that first flush of love, which might turn out to be lust in disguise. But she's a confident and discerning young woman. She certainly isn't going to be a pushover just because a good-looking guy gives her some attention. That's my little sister. My brother, Owen, was hoping to make it home for the party, but he's at the infantry battle school in Brecon right now, which is part of his combat infantryman's course. It's not exactly a picnic, and that thought sort of puts our little problems into perspective. He's learning how to become a soldier, to fight for people's freedom, and here I am, angsting over a little hiccup that will probably disappear as quickly as it appeared. Our home is heaving with people. Close family, friends, colleagues and neighbours. Everyone we've invited to the party is here for a reason, because they touch our lives on a regular basis. Time for an announcement. George's husband Steve tries unsuccessfully to tap a fork against a glass to gain people's attention. Unfortunately, he hits it too hard, and a generous shower of red wine splatters over his white t-shirt as the broken shards fall to the floor. All that remains in his hand is the stem and the base of the glass. Georgia gives him a look of total disbelief before grabbing a roll of kitchen towel. The clean-up commences, while Steve continues. Momentous occasion alert, folks. I'm not exactly sure what's coming, so I'm going to hand you over to Aiden, without further ado. Georgia is on her hands and knees, glaring up at Steve. She worships me, really, he comments, and everyone bursts out laughing. I wish I could laugh, but my eyes are on my lovely husband, who steps forward rather nervously. He turns to look at me, and I saunter up to him as he reaches out for my hand. It's ironic that as soon as we sorted out what the next step was going to be, things have been almost back to normal between us. I give his hand a reassuring squeeze to spur him on. Well, the only person missing today to hear our announcement is Fern's brother, Owen. But he's here in spirit, even if the reality is that he's probably trekking up a mountainside on some sort of endurance course. A little ripple of laughter does the rounds. But to have you all gathered here together, today, means so much to us both. This party isn't about celebrating our recent lottery win, but the importance we place upon the people who matter the most to us, family and friends. We'd like to kick off by asking you all to raise your glasses. He turns to smile at me, lifting my hand to his mouth and kissing the back of it. Over to you for the toast, my darling. The look we exchange is one of determination as I gaze back at him. Having made the decision, the change in Aiden is unbelievable. It's been a wonderful journey so far, and we feel blessed to have such an amazing and supportive bunch of people around us. Here's to you all, and a special toast to my baby sister, Hannah, who will be 19 next week. Happy birthday, sis! The response is a loud chorus of hear, hear, and gentle clinking of glasses after Steve's little disaster. We're both very aware that it isn't money and having things that make people happy, although the lack of it is a problem when you're trying to convince a bank to loan you an extortionate amount of money. We found that out at the start of the long road to buying this place. But with the help of some loving parents, I tip my glass in the appropriate directions, we eventually signed on the dotted line. I hesitate for a second, then pull myself together determinedly. I agreed to this, and now it's too late to back out. Being able to pay back what we borrowed, be mortgage-free, and have a little nest egg is the dream, and we realise just how lucky we are. Sharing is caring, of course, so our 3 favourite charities will each receive a nice little donation, and that means a lot to us both. A loud endorsing "ah" carries around the room. Obviously, Aiden has worked tirelessly for the Merchant Outreach Foundation, which offers financial support to families with autistic siblings. It's never been just a job to him, and he's devoted a lot of his own time to it. Weekends and annual leave when he could have been kicking back, he has been tirelessly fundraising. So, we know what a difference this little windfall will make. The 2 other charities who will benefit are research into childhood cancers and Alzheimer's. The latter is in memory of Aiden's gran, Daisy. As I finish speaking, everyone begins clapping, and it's wonderful to know that the general consensus is one of approval. Aiden holds up his hands, quietening our little crowd of happy partygoers. And there's some other exciting news we'd like to share with you all. He turns to me and I nod, encouraging him to continue, albeit I'm struggling to look enthusiastic. This win has allowed us a little self-indulgence. We were in our teens when we met, and getting married fresh from university, we jumped straight into work. It's been virtually non-stop, and there hasn't been much chance to sit back and relax. So, the other news is that we're both taking a year off. We're having a gap year, a chance for each of us to tick off a couple of items on that list we all tend to have in here. He taps his head. Things we'd like to do someday. Not exactly a bucket list, more a before we have kids and get caught up in that thing. There isn't a sound in the room as he continues. And we're both excited about the experiences to come. I intend to travel, and Fern... Well, it's time to take a break from being at everyone's beck and call. He turns to smile at me with adoration in his eyes, and something at my core wilts a little. Aiden is doing a great job of making this sound as if I'm really on board with his idea. Inside, however, I feel I've been backed into a corner, and his enthusiasm is beginning to grate on me. There's a moment of hesitation before Georgia leads by raising her glass, and everyone else follows suit. After a raucous chorus of general congratulations, Aiden again raises his hand to quieten everyone down. Maybe the spirits have been flowing a little too liberally tonight. Right, That's it, folks. Speech is over and the buffet awaits. Enjoy! As people head in the direction of the food, Aiden steers me outside into the garden. We disappear into the shadows as dusk falls around us, and this evening is beginning to feel like a dream, one bordering on a nightmare if I'm being honest. Reality is setting in, and it sends a cold shiver down my spine. Over the last couple of weeks, as Aiden and I began making plans, we reached a point where it was time to break the news to close family members. Telling our respective parents wasn't easy, and I figured that as this was all Aiden's idea, he should do the explaining. There were a few raised eyebrows, but Aiden made it sound so plausible, even I started to relax about it a little. It was easier to tell Hannah and Owen at the same time, so when she popped in one evening, we'd gathered around the monitor and Skyped Owen. The last thing I wanted was for him to feel left out, and his reaction had shown a momentary hint of surprise, but it was fleeting. Bold decision. Anything we should be worried about, guys? He'd inquired calmly. His words were accompanied by that wicked little grin of his, the one he can't hide whenever he's nervous. No, of course not. I'm heading off to Provence on a little road trip. I'll be spending time in a quaint little holiday village run by a very talented group of artisans. They hold courses in a wide variety of traditional skills, everything from weaving to engraving, and the man in charge of it all is a renowned artist. I'll be generally helping out as a volunteer, working a full day on Monday and then 4 mornings, so I'll have lots of free time. Aiden wants to travel further afield. The truth of it was that I knew Aiden needed to get this travelling thing out of his system. Maybe he wanted to experience a sense of freedom as an adult that he felt he'd missed out on. But how could I possibly stay home, trying to go about life as normal while anxiously awaiting his updates? Heck, a lottery winner's supposed to take worry away, not increase it. So I decided to chase an elusive dream of my own, to keep me busy and stop me fretting over our time apart. Hannah had raised an eyebrow almost dismissively. You're going your separate ways? For a whole year? She'd stared at me, horrified, and then her eyes had darted across to assess Aiden's reaction. She had no idea, of course, that this was his idea and not mine. Free time to do what, exactly? She'd levelled at me, a tad caustically, I felt. How did I get to be the baddie in this, I wondered. Mainly because, in her eyes, Aiden can do no wrong, which has been great up to now. But it wasn't my decision or my fault. I just couldn't say that, as Aiden had enough to contend with. So it was about damage limitation. Well, mostly to learn how to draw and paint, but whatever takes my fancy. Fern, you don't have hobbies. You're not that sort of person. Naturally, Aiden had jumped in to rescue me at that point. I think he was feeling guilty, as everyone else had avoided saying the things that only Hannah was brave enough to voice. Fern has spent our entire married life either studying, working, or supporting me on the charity side of things. She's always been there for everyone. You both know that. She's never really taken any time for herself. It was a cop-out, and I'd puzzled over why Aiden hadn't simply told them the truth, that this wasn't about me at all. I was simply falling into line with his plan, in the hope that he'd come back refreshed and ready to move forward together. But the idea of a once-in-a-lifetime breakaway was growing on me too. I was beginning to get a little excited about attending classes taught by artist Nico. I'm just a bit surprised you couldn't find something you both enjoy doing, she declared. You guys do everything as a couple. It was a statement we couldn't refute. Before I could even think of a response, Aiden took over again. Can you see your sister living out of a rucksack? I'll be backpacking and working down that list of places I never thought I'd get to explore. I'm hoping to do a stint of voluntary work to begin with, and that, too, won't be luxury accommodation. It's a big old world out there. Change presents opportunity, and this is a one-off chance of a lifetime. I noticed that he hadn't mentioned my fear of flying, or the fact that I could never step foot on a boat, something over which I have no control, and he's had to learn to live with. We've always had driving holidays, and Aiden accepted the limitations because he loved me. Owen had nodded then. Well, good luck to you both, guys, and I hope you come back the better for it. We knew Owen would understand, being a man of action and few words. But Hannah, well, she wasn't convinced. But this is weird. Married people don't take a year off from each other. She was upset, and maybe even a little scandalised. Inwardly, I'd groaned, but thankfully my lips had stayed sealed until something suitable had popped into my head. We aren't. We'll be in constant touch with each other. The whole point of this is that we get to share in what the other person is doing without having to physically be there. A half-hour trip through the tunnel, and then it's the open road for me. But Aiden's dream has always been to travel to far-flung places, and he deserves to have his trip of a lifetime. I'll also get to see what he's doing and learn about his experiences, but everyone knows. I'd ground to a halt at that point, unable to find the right words. Anyway, I'm looking forward to picking up a paintbrush in earnest. I tried so hard to make it sound convincing, but the person I'd really been trying to convince was me. And I'll be getting myself into shape with more exercise than I'd get in a month at the gym. Aiden had endorsed. His smile and genuine enthusiasm had been abundantly clear. Hannah had simply shrugged her shoulders, clearly not at all convinced. Well, just make sure you keep us all in the loop. You guys are Mr. and Mrs. Predictable, and to have everyone worrying about you two while you're on your mad adventures is kind of crazy. As the youngest family member, I think I'm the one who's supposed to be causing the angst, she added with a half-hearted smile. Aiden and I had both started laughing at that point. It won't be out of sight, out of mind. We'll keep everyone in the loop, no matter what else we're doing. But I think you can spare us for a year, as there are enough people around to keep you on the straight and narrow. Besides, your sister is only a phone call away. Aiden had replied with mock seriousness. In the seconds before the Skype session disconnected, a fleeting moment of vulnerability had flooded through me. Was I scared of facing the world alone? I'd thrown off that thought, too worried to consider where it might lead, and had immediately switched into practical mode. Godspeed! And can everyone please take good care of themselves until we're all together again? And for goodness sake, check in with Mum and Dad so they don't spend every waking hour worrying about every single one of us. My plea had been heartfelt. There was a moment of silence before we'd been disconnected, and I filled it with, "We love you. Please take care of yourself, Owen." Sometimes the next step is as scary as it is exciting, and no one, including me, had thought that Aiden and I would be going in this direction. Dreams are only dreams, unless you choose to turn them into reality. I could only hope that the decisions Aiden and I had made together would turn out to be the right ones. July 2018. Bois-Saint-Vernon, Provence. Chapter 4. Settling in. The leisurely 2-day journey was strangely calming after making some very emotional goodbyes. Understandable, given the circumstances, but distance is nothing these days. Loved ones are merely a call away. Or that's what everyone had said whilst studiously avoiding eye contact. The reality of that scenario, though, is something I will have to learn to come to terms with, because I fear I will get homesick. What if something bad happens and you never get to look into those eyes up close ever again? It's unbearable, it's torture. And the only way to cope with that is to plaster on a smile so no one knows your heart is breaking. On my first call to Hannah en route, she managed to put on a brave face because her boyfriend Liam was with her. But I could tell that she didn't really want to talk to me and was simply going through the motions. Perhaps she was still cross with me, or maybe she was simply having a bad day. Liam reminds me of a young Aiden in some ways, but he's less impetuous than the boyish Aiden was before responsibility began weighing him down. It did make me stop and think about how much Aiden has changed since we first met. We went from the excitement of getting married and living together to the harsh realities of having bills to pay and a house to do up. Was it a mistake focusing on the goals we'd set ourselves, and that's what ground him down? Did it suck the joy out of life, feeling a constant pressure as our body clocks ticked away? Baby time, baby time. The upside to the conversation was that if I'd had any concerns about Liam recklessly breaking Hannah's heart, they quickly dissolved. Liam realizes how dependent my sister is on me, and he's trying his best to fill the gap, which is touching. There are no guarantees, of course, but they seem committed to each other for the time being. I also think he's a little wary around me, as he senses that anyone who hurts my little sister will have to face my wrath. The truth is that I really didn't want to leave, but if I stayed, life without Aiden by my side would have been unbearable, almost as if we had split up. So, I had to pull up my big girl pants and give myself a talking to. I can either be miserable, and this can be a year of hell, or I can use it to grow. I decided I'd make it about meeting new people and learning new skills. I would return a better person, my life enriched and with a much wider appreciation of the world outside the tiny confines of my personal little bubble. While Aiden felt he'd held me back in some ways, I too had held him back with my phobias. The mere thought of being on a plane and the door closing, incarcerating me for even the shortest of flights, makes me feel faint. I did brave a ferry once and had a full-blown panic attack. It was the same feeling of being trapped and helpless. Aiden admitted it was a frightening experience for us both, as he'd never seen me like that before. He's never blamed me for limiting our travel horizons, and, in fairness, I can't begrudge him the chance to grab this opportunity. Maybe the lottery win wasn't a mere fluke, but fate intervening. So, here I am, on the last leg towards my own little adventure. However, as I pull into the vast forecourt in front of le Château de Vernon, there is nothing at all little about this retreat, and my stomach begins to flutter nervously. Looking at it on Google Maps, it was hard to imagine the scale, and I'd expected a cosy little cluster of barns and outbuildings around the main house. This is more like a little village. I park up alongside an old Citroën, and even before I've had a chance to swing the car door shut and stretch my arms, a voice calls out in English, "Just in time for dinner!" An older woman, elegantly dressed in several layers of very colourful clothing, walks towards me, smiling. "Welcome, Fern. I've been keeping an eye out for you. Everyone calls me Didi." She grins at me, and positive energy seems to flow from her. The accent is subtle, and I can't place it. Her English is perfect, though. She envelops me in her arms, as if we're old friends. "How was your journey?" "Very pleasant, thank you," I reply good-naturedly. "There's no greater indulgence than the luxury of some time alone to think, is there? A car journey can be quite cathartic, I've always found." I nod, grateful for her warm welcome. It helps to calm my nerves, and I'm delighted that the first person I meet is someone in whose company I instantly feel relaxed. We holidayed in and around the region of Provence several times when I was young. I have some great memories of those days, and it's good to be back here. Good. The word seems to echo around inside my head, but not the same. "Wonderful! And your arrival is so timely. The next batch of visitors arrive tomorrow. So, it's a low-key dinner this evening. We can sort your bags later. It's this way." I turn to lock the car, and she calls out over her shoulder, "There's no need to lock anything here. You'll soon adjust to a more relaxed way of living. We're a little too far out to encounter people on foot, and you can usually hear a car coming even before it turns into the courtyard." Directly in front of the rather commanding chateau is an old, cobbled forecourt bordered by enormous planters containing neatly clipped evergreen shrubs.